And the rest of the elders, would you join us on the platform, please? Nick, George, Ralph. We're missing Jim Bates this morning. I think that's the only one missing. Have a seat. I'm glad you're up. Go ahead, George. I know exactly. Yeah, you're right. We mentioned last week that over the next few weeks we're going to introduce a different segment of those that are servants of this body. And I wanted to start with our elders. And we're going to go into 1 Peter chapter 5 in a few moments and see where the elders' ministry has been established and introduced to us. But I want you to know that these are not political authorities. They do not hold any political or authority status in this church beyond any other. They are a part of the board and have a vote just like every other board member. But what we rely upon them for is twofold. One, they are the administrators of the Lord's Supper, and they are the ones who help deliver the offering. But so much more important than that, and for me as a pastor, these are the ones who, with experience, devotion, and commitment, serve as my prayer team and counselors. And when I do often, feel the need of a word of counsel or wisdom of the past and what it has brought, I have gone to every one of these men, and we have shared heart to heart over many things. And in the 11 some years now that we've served as pastor, some of us have walked through some pretty deep waters together and truly held each other up, and we're probably the reason we're all still here is each other. And the grace of the Lord. So I want you first to meet them. Get a microphone for me, please, sir. And we will just do a brief introduction. Alan, you introduced yourself last week, so we won't make you do it again. Yes, sir. For those who weren't here, Alan, you work at Highlands Community Services, and counseling primarily and helping folks in that. And he has a wife and a son and a daughter-in-law and 3 grandchildren. And how long have you been in the church?
In this church?
Yes.
Since about 2006.
2006. How long have you been a believer?
Since I was 13.
So about 20 years. Yeah. Nick, you kind of answer the same questions.
Well, I've been coming to this church here in Bristol since I was a teenager, around 1965, I believe, or 64 was the first time I ever came here. But after Will and I were married in 1969, we became members and have been attending here ever since. I work at a little company down on Shelby Street called Office Machines and Supply Company, where I've been for 44 years this coming August. So I've been around the block down there a time or two. Have one son and one grandson. And before I came to church here, we attended in Saltville, which is where we're originally from. Saltville is the way it's probably pronounced. But anyway, it's been a pleasure to know the Lord all my life, actually.
Yes. Okay, let George talk. And Nick and I were in high school together at Virginia High School for a while. Georgie?
Okay, Al and I came here in 1997 and have been here for since. We have two daughters. One lives in California, the other one in Roanoke, and we've got two granddaughters. And both of my daughters all attend church and have grown up in Bristol there, and so we're pleased with them and our grandchildren there. And Isla has been not feeling too good for the last couple of years, and we can use your prayers for her, and would appreciate them.
Thank you, George. And George and I are really the prayer heart of this church. If you need prayer, I guarantee you they'll touch the throne for you. And they also carry the missions heart of this church. Jackson.
I'm Jack Dale. My wife Teresa sings in the choir and on the praise team. And we have two children, Myron, Timothy, and his wife Charlotte, which live in Church Hill and attend Ridgeview Baptist. They're very active in their church. He plays trumpet in the praise team there, and also serves on the finance committee at that church. He's the finance director of Hawkins County Schools in Rogersville. And I also have a daughter, Willie, that's married to Jonathan Grunstra, which is the son of the Grunstras sitting back here. And we just had a new grandbaby born this past weekend. Back on Myron's side, we have two grandsons, Michael and Gabriel. They're over 3 years old. They were born, what year was that?
August 12,
2009. We've attended this church since 2000, same time we came the same time Alan and his family came. And I've been trying my best to serve the Lord since I was just a child. And Teresa and I met when we were teenagers and married shortly thereafter.
Thank you, Jack. And Jack and Teresa and the Pinks have been friends for most of our lives. George?
I'm Ralph.
Ralph. You're doing good.
I've been coming to this church ever since I met my wife, or married her, I should say. And we're coming up on 63 years, so I've been here a long time. 64.
Extra prayers.
Right, yeah. I've been here so long, my memory's about shot. Anyway, we have 4 children. 2 of them are attending the church here now.
Yes.
2 boys, 2 girls, 10 grandchildren, and I believe the last count was 15 great-grandchildren. So we have quite a family. But it's been a privilege to serve this church as best I've been able to do. And I can always use your prayers.
My name is Todd Peak. I have a slight relation to this guy back here. Of course, my wife Crystal and my boys Cody and Grayson, back over here. I, for a living, sell light bulbs. I have people tease, how do you make a living selling light bulbs? I sell a lot of light bulbs. I'm very blessed and thankful to do that. I've been, every time I think about this or say this, it really kind of blows my mind. But I've been serving the church in worship ministry for going on 28 years. I feel way too young to have 28 years in ministry.
Me too.
But I've been leading worship in some capacity, leading youth ministry in some capacity, since really before I was old enough to be in a youth group. I was leading worship in a youth group before they were willing to let me in the youth group. So, but I love the Lord. I love love serving His church. And there's nothing I enjoy more than just resting in His presence. And I hope that you can see that, because that's where I want us to be as a church, is just to be able to be in His presence week after week, day after day, whether it's through song or through the Word or through the heart of prayer, through the heart of missions. I want us to realize God's presence is with us and to know that. And I've been serving here as Associate Pastor, Worship Leader, and in some capacity with youth before Adam Treese, who was blessed to join us, since, I was trying to remember this the other day, 2004?
I think it's 4.
Is that right? So, been here for a little while.
Thank you. You would say, why would you do that on a Sunday morning service? 2 or 3 reasons. One in particular, and part of this happened in a Bible study we were in. I have come to the place that I've realized that if we're not careful, we will come into this place and really get very familiar with the back of each other's heads and not really know each other at all about our lives. And I've, through the years, had people explain and describe the fact that, you know what I'm talking about, Pastor. They sit over on the side next to the stand hall, and they sit about 2/3 of the way down, and they're kind of tall. And I went through this week with someone. You know, the lady that's blonde and kind of tall, and she sits, and I want us to grow as the family of God closer than that. And especially in those that are willing to serve the Lord and His church, I want you to know that you can trust the elders and the officers of this church. And I want you to know, as we will move on toward the committees and the ministries within this church, that there is a place for you to serve the Lord at First Christian. And I want you to find that place that God calls you to be. And so that's why we do some of this. And if it's tedious to you, just pray that the Lord will lead me somewhere else, and I will try to hear His voice. But for now, that's where I feel that He's leading us in some of these things. Now, we are going to go to the Word every time and talk about, in some ways, the ministries that we have sitting before you. Now, in 1 Peter chapter 5, reading from the New King James, it starts off, "The elders who are among you I exhort, I who am a fellow elder." As I was preparing for this, even yesterday, I kept thinking, I'm not sure that I should be speaking about elders in 3 or 4 ways. I am one. I have been asked to serve on this board as an elder, but as the pure definition of the scriptural word elder, I are also one. And that simply means I'm older than most of you, is really what this scripture means, guys. I'm sorry. That's really what the original elders were. They were the guys that were older than most of the rest. Now, Peter wrote this letter, and in thinking of, I wondered just how old Peter was to write this letter, because the next line, or that last line I read, is really what Spirit spurred me on to go ahead and share this with you. He says, I am an elder. And so he's speaking to the elders, and he's speaking for the elders as an elder. Now, remembering this period of time, the average life span was around 40 years. And those who lived longer than that were the unusual. Peter was one of the unusual. Peter was most probably, when he was chosen to be a disciple, he was somewhere in his mid-20s. Most of the disciples were in their 20s. There's even some thought that a couple of the disciples were in their teens. Now that kind of shakes you up, doesn't it? Kind of frightens me a little bit. But in thinking of that time, and in the historical record of all of the processes of Peter's life, Peter was, at the time of writing this letter, he was in his early 60s. He lived to be about 67, but at this point in time, he was in most probably his early 60s. So he was, and especially for that time, he was for sure an elder.